I'm honored and happy to have here Ramsay Henderson. He's over with Nokē. Nokē is one of our awesome integrated partners that we've been working with. So he's our Director of International Business Development. For those of you who aren't familiar with me quite yet, Andy Larson. I'm on the Geokey side, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. So Ramsay, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here with you. We've always been really excited about our partnership with Geokey. You guys have always been on the forefront of kind of moving the needle and providing, a lot of value with our product to the needed customer base. So we're excited on this call to kind of get into some more details that will hopefully help out your end customers, some of your other partnerships, and like we said, we love how Geokey has always moved the needle forward. So this will be great.
Absolutely. This is a partnership that we've had in our vision as a company here at Geokey for a little while now, and kind of been knocking on the door with the folks over at Nokē, and kind of came together and found a really good partnership here. So today we're going to cover kind of a lot of good use cases, good scenarios, and just overall industries and avenues that we're working in with these padlocks. So kind of want to start it off right away with why Geokey, Ramsay? Why did you guys see this partnership and overall integration, an instrumental move, not only for you guys, but for us here, and kind of how do we get to where we're at today?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think our conversation started back a few years. Brandon, your CEO, reached out to us and was interested in one of our product offerings. It seems that they were trying to build together the best product offering based off of kind of the feedback that you were getting from your customer base. And truth be told, normally we don't take on a lot of partnerships traditionally, but Brandon, showed a lot of value with the Geokey team and structure overall, and that's kind of what made us say yes and kind of start working with you guys. Key points: customer support, implementation support, the fact that you guys have very technical background, software and hardware. That's something that we needed to, better serve our customer base and expand our market. And you know, that's where the conversation started, and it's just kind of grown from there as far as
Yeah.
the value that Geokey has provided our side.
Awesome. Obviously with support, implementation, and then being software focused, we really have two products with you guys. And I know mainly what we're focusing on today is the padlock side, but get into a little bit of your guys' background and history of not only the unit controllers, those Bluetooth-based door controllers, but as well as the padlocks. Kind of give us a little bit of insight on those and what those really look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nokē we has been around for a little over 7 years. Very short background. They started off in kind of a Kickstarter, cool gadgets for the smartphone, and one of them was a padlock that you could open with your phone.
Yeah.
Um, what ended up happening is when they released that product, they had a lot of interest in some of these enterprise applications. One being like self storage, another being like trucking and logistics, another being like telecom and utility companies. And so Nokē made a pivot from being kind of a consumer focused cool gadget to more of an industrial application. And so over the course of like the last 5 years, we were acquired by one of our customers. That customer is really strong in self storage, which is a niche kind of hardware and software environment. Um, and what we were able to do with that acquisition is actually we were able to take a lot of the hardware that we developed and bring it over to more of our general access control side. And so that's where we get the unit controller, where it's unique in the sense that it's hardware agnostic. It works primarily with Bluetooth. I think that's where our initial conversation started. And it's also very retrofittable. So the implementation time is typically less. Our costs tend to be a little bit less than your standard access control with a lot more capabilities in the controller. Um, but along with that, our core product or kind of our kind of special offering has always been the padlock. And so unique about the padlock is that most people are um, looking for access control when they buy mechanical padlocks. They're just buying a very archaic piece of access control where it's a padlock with two keys or a combination. And what the market has shown us is people need to have a really simple way to implement access control and visibility, where just using a padlock, same form factor as most mechanical padlocks, but now you can gain insights and control using your phone. And that site doesn't need to have power run to it or cellular Wi-Fi. We're just leveraging the communication of
Yeah.
the smart device someone carries with them. So
awesome. Yeah, and that leads into a lot of the points that we like to cover here at Geokey, being hardware agnostic, being able to provide the best solution for the customer, and that means having a wide variety of options for that customer. So I want to kind of pivot then into really, where has NOKE seen the biggest wins? A lot of the folks we're talking to within our industry here, both from our our installers and folks out in the field, even to our customers, I think it's seeing technology of this level and saying, well, we've used keys and normal padlocks for so long. Why do I need to transition with the age of technology? Some are slower to transition. They haven't quite wrapped their head around why this is such an attractive piece of technology to have in the field, in their shops of all different types of industries. So really, where have you guys seen the biggest wins with these padlocks and with these devices, whether it's, industries, certain things like that? Kind of shed a little bit of light on that for those listening.
yeah, absolutely. So what we've kind of discovered is that as a whole, there is quite a bit of logistical pain point. If you have, let's say, more than 50 padlocks, typically 50 of those padlocks are spread out on multiple sites. Or the other pain point that we find is someone maybe has a dozen padlocks, but they have a really high turnover of people that need to access those locks. And traditionally, what happens is that if you have 50 locks in the field and you've got a staff of six guys or 60 people, you have to get a physical key to each one of those people, and you have to say, when you're done working, I want you to bring this back to me, or only come pick up this key when you need it. A lot of companies, they'll have a key ring and say, hey, Joe is our guy that handles the key ring. If you need to go to this site, or if it's like a city or municipality where they've got uh, gates that are padlocked for fire department, things like this, a lot of times it's, okay, who had the key last? Where's the key? Do I just clip the padlock off and I'll put a new one on? Now none of those keys work, or none of those codes work. So there's like this logistical bottleneck when you're having to secure a bunch of locations that don't have uh, you know, a man door on there where you could put a traditional. So by putting the padlock on, we've been able to resolve those issues, where I can grant you access with my smartphone from anywhere in the world. I can schedule your access. I can see the who, where, and when accesses your site. And so the verticals that we've had the biggest win are like a remote site management. So take any of your water utilities, your gas utilities, um, telecom, even like construction site management, where they want to secure a construction site for the 18 months that they're working there. They have a lot of time lost in managing that access with the keys, or they run the risk of having somebody on site when they shouldn't be there, and then it becomes dangerous because everyone has access to a key. We don't know who accessed it, things like that. So remote site management is probably one of our strongest in like utilities. Like Andy, you guys are based there in Tennessee, right?
Nebraska.
Nebraska. Sorry, there you go. So Nebraska. So in Nebraska, the city of Nebraska, they have their own management of the entire city. Gates, viaducts, water valves for irrigation, all sorts of things, hundreds of padlocks. Huge pain point for the city because not every employee has access to that key. They have to go find the guy. And we've actually found that most companies are spending anywhere from like 35 minutes to 4 hours just locating keys before they can do their job. And so for companies like this, where time is money, they need to be efficient. Having a way that they can monitor and quickly distribute access and then revoke that access is really valuable, especially for remote site management. So that's one of the kind of verticals and companies that companies like that would fit into that vertical, that find just a lot of value in being able to manage their access like they would like they would their office building.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the transition too, with technology nowadays is people have used key fobs and key cards for so long for just their normal day to day within, doors and facilities where, we're trying to get everybody to move to that new age of technology. And we want them to know, hey, there's padlocks now that are in this avenue of access control, right? You can log into your Geokey portal. You can grant access to someone out in the field so you don't have to send out a site manager or anybody out there on a late night visit or whatever it might be when someone gets back from a job site late and they don't have the key to get into that facility. So being able to grant someone access to even a padlock right there to be able to unlock it, not to mention just the data analytics, the tracking, using geolocational services with Geokey to then get into those padlocks as well is really a big plus. We've seen a lot of those just from local companies here that we've been working with, from your local landscaping companies to utilities districts, people that haven't ever seen this type of technology before, where when they see it, they test it and they use it in a real life setting, they're really seeing the value there. So I'm glad you touched on that, because that's definitely something we see a lot of use cases for. So
just one thing to kind of piggyback on there. It's really interesting. A lot of the customers that approach Geokey for a solution like this, they actually come in, they say, hey, we just want key management because it's a pain in the butt to, manage physical keys, which is a huge value add as far as time and efficiency. What's been interesting is that the NOKE padlock is really an IoT device, and it helps you collect data. And we've had companies come back to us after a year or two of using it and saying, okay, we actually improved our process because we were able to more control the workflow of the user on that specific site. Because that's a lot of times the problem is that someone's getting to that site and they're either not there when they say they are, or they're taking longer than what they should and they're trying to bill you differently, or all sorts of things. And so the actual visibility into your business after implementing a piece of hardware like this in the Geokey platform ends up kind of providing another level of value into your total business. And I think that's, another reason why we really like working with Geokey, is because your platform is very conducive to kind of improving business processes by managing some of that access control.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that answered my next question for you too, really, why customers are choosing NOKE padlocks and Geokey software over your traditional keys and locks that have been out there for years. I think you hit it spot on. So, unless you have anything else to touch on that, we can kind of jump to the next section. But I guess anything that you tell to customers when they are kind of weighing the pros and cons and the cost of a NOKE padlock versus your traditional lock and key?
Sure. I'd say this is that the product offering that we do with Geokey, it is a top tier product offering because it's a highly engineered piece of hardware. This isn't like what you go find at the Home Depot and Lowe's and things like that. This is for people that are doing industrial security and access control. And I think a lot of times, whether it be somebody who's just buying like 5 locks for a office and a gated yard, or whether it be like a company like Verizon or Chevron that have multiple thousands and thousands, is that you really need to make sure you're using a piece of hardware that's going to last the test of time on there. It needs to be very maintenanceable is what we're finding. And then it needs to be user friendly. And I think that's where the Geokey and NOKE kind of marry together really, really well. And the value add is that you're actually purchasing a system, and not to run over, but what we've actually kind of seen in the industry, especially with the advent of COVID, there's a huge need for business efficiency, and you only get that through visibility. And we've been able to bring our hardware with the Geokey platform to kind of combine both those things, where you no longer require somebody to need to be there the same time as you to pick something up. Or if you have somebody that's having access once, if anybody has ever lost their keys while they're trying to get on the way out of the door, you know how much of an inconvenience that is. And that's just a personal kind of thing. What we find is that the time loss and the frustration and the disruption in workflow is typically a 5x for enterprises, whether you be a lawn care service, whether you be a Chevron or an AT&T or something like that, where you have larger scale. It really boils down to the user just having a very simple process, and then management being able to have visibility and then make the right decisions. And I think that's where we play a.
Yeah, you hit on two things that I really liked there. First, just I think it transitions into the durability, right? These are high quality padlocks that last the test of time out in the field. So that's one thing I want to get into in a minute, but also then kind of touch on really, our two companies came together with this partnership because of really, in my eyes, I like to say two things. One, you guys do hardware extremely well. You've built an awesome product that has a demand in several industries, and we like to come in and be just a software focused, the customer support focused, make sure we can take care of the customer 110%. So I really like that you touch on that, but want to jump into some of the the just what the padlocks are made of. You touched on these are going to be a long-term durable solution. Outside of you're walking out to a job site, nobody can get into that lock because I don't have a key. Well, shoot, now I got to clip that lock and I'm out of lock while I'm trying to replace it. So maybe those have been out there for several years. Talk a little bit on, obviously we see the specs here and things like that, but really the average lifespan, battery life, things like that. Kind of touch on that a little bit for some of the folks.
Part of Noke's history is we actually had a very consumer lock. Some of them are still floating around. They're a little round padlock.
Yep.
Great lock, but we discovered that we needed to have something that is very industrial. One of our major clients is in Lebanon. They put these padlocks on oil tankers to prevent the drivers from actually stealing fuel. That's a very common thing to happen. Is that sometimes in transit things end up missing, and one of the ways to stop that is making sure that the driver can't access it.
Yeah.
But to the durability, we had to make a lock be able to sit on the back of a truck, vibrating for thousands of hours, and then be able to turn around and do what it needed to do in dirt, grime, wind, cold, all those things. And so that's where we came about with the design of the HD padlock. So I think the first thing to notice is that the HD padlock itself, we typically offer it in a steel version. It's got a boron hardened steel shackle that's a 10 millimeter thick. It's considered a grade 4 padlock on the CEN scale. If you're not familiar with the CEN scale, it's what's used kind of, locks, how strong they are. And it goes from 1 to 6. A 5 and a 6 are a shackle that are like 11 and 14 millimeters thick. But so the lock itself is very, very durable. It's waterproof. It's an IP67, meaning it can be submerged for an hour or two, pull out of the water, it still works. It can be sprayed with water, things like that.
Yeah.
So very durable. We have different shackle offerings. Not every shackle, a 10 millimeter won't fit every place the lock needs to go. So all of our shackles are boron hardened steel. The pull strength is pretty immense. You can't clip these in half like you would a standard padlock, because again, they have to be industrial grade, and we're in a lot of third world countries with our hardware. This is the primary method of security. So first of all, durability and waterproofing is of an industrial standard. The battery is measured on time, temperature, and usage. And as you can kind of see here, we have our standard operating temperatures. And what that operating temperature means is that if it gets below these, what happens is the lock won't fall open. It fails secure, meaning if the battery dies, it's going to stay locked. But essentially, if it dips below those operating temperatures in the cold sense, we've made a workaround where you can hold an external battery to kind of give that lock enough charge where it can do its opening and closing. And then when it warms up, the lock will be fine. The battery will be fine. And that's more of, indicative to batteries instead of the Nokē hardware. We like to say the lock will, on a single battery, be open and closed 5 times a day for about 3 years. So about 30,000 opens. My math might be a little off on there. But the nice thing is that every time you open up the padlock, you can actually get a reading on battery life. So you can do preventative maintenance. If the battery ever does die because of typically neglect, you can jumpstart it and replace the battery. It's just 2 extra steps outside of opening the lock there.
Yeah.
So pretty durable comparison to other padlocks. Um, there's not a lot of locks out there that will go beyond a year and a half, just standard. And we designed ours specifically to go to sleep, and it's only using that battery when you're opening it. And so that's partially why we get a better battery life than most pieces of hardware that are in enterprise environments like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we get that question a lot from, prospective customers and really anybody that we're talking to, because they see a battery on a padlock. They've got a ton of questions naturally. It's something that's different. And with the Geokey software, you're the admin, you're overseeing that site. You will have the ability to swipe to the left on that padlock and actually unshackle it. That's then how you can get in and change the battery. So, definitely an option where these can stay in the field. Someone notices a little red light flashing on the bottom of it, hey, low battery. They can relay that back to management. Whoever has that ability can go out in the field, replace those batteries and do that checkup on them. Another thing I was just gonna say another thing too that we get a lot of questions on is, well, what if I do have to, cut a shackle? Maybe these are expensive padlocks, right? They're meant to go through the ringer. If you do have to cut a shackle, the nice thing is you can just replace it. You're not out the entire body of the padlock. So something I want to touch on, because I know you had mentioned obviously the strength of these and anything like that, but if that does happen, we are able to unshackle, send you guys out a new shackle and replace it there with really no problem at all. So
yeah, and just to layer on top of that, what we've seen we have thousands and thousands of these deployed all over the world. We don't see a lot of clip shackles. It's normally a pretty simple process to either use the jump start method or replace the battery, and then the lock is good to go. And so as far as a maintenance piece of hardware with the battery, you get insights into that to be able to be preventative if necessary. And it's not every year that you're having to do that. Typically, depending on the site, it's every 2 to 3+ years. But they're very serviceable, very easy. And if you're not opening the lock every day, like it's on a remote site, you're not going to have to, oh, we better go replace that battery. It's going to kind of basically just sleep until it needs to be used. So you can get a much longer life depending on the usage of the lock.
Awesome.
Well, that kind of covers, the next topic I wanted to get into. So we really just knocked out 2 birds with 1 stone there. Kind of the last and final piece I want to get into here in just the last couple of minutes is really there's a lot of the top benefits, obviously, of the smart padlocks. I know we talked on remote site pickup, key management being, I think in my mind, a lot of our customers and other folks that we're talking to is just the overall key management is really the biggest value add. So in your eyes and kind of what you've seen over your years within NOKE, within working with a lot of different customers and a lot of different industries, what are just a few of the main benefits that you see that you can just recap on for us?
Yeah, and I think if everyone's seeing the same slide deck that I'm seeing here is the operational efficiency is the broadest way to say it. When you're using we've got this little snippet of we've all seen the chain link fence with the gate, and all sorts of things who has a key, who has a code for that. I just started here, or I'm just here for 1 day. It's pretty difficult to manage access, and we're finding that when offices or companies have more than like 25 locks plus scattered, there's this definite inefficiency for managing it. And it's not something that they'll see every day. It's something that they actually probably experience every time the once a month or once a quarter somebody new has to open that lock. All of a sudden it's kind of like this we find a lot of people, it's not very intuitive.
Yeah.
And with Geokey, an administrator can give access in real time, and that using with that user's smartphone. Quick download of an app if they're not a long-term employee or a contractor. So some of the details of that are, the key management. As long as somebody has a smartphone, they can have access to the lock if needed. Um, Depending on your industry is kind of where the different values will rely, but just kind of hit it again is that anytime you have 25 to 50 padlocks or a customer of yours, they're buying, a couple dozen padlocks from you every year, they're going to find a lot of value in being able to simply manage that fleet of hardware through a web portal, and very, very, very simply. Um, One other point that we didn't really touch on is secured pickup. We have a lot of distribution centers, or we have a lot of companies where they have pickup boxes where traditionally there's a padlock on there, or they've got to go find the inventory guy to go pick it up. We have our locks put on maybe 15 boxes. The inventory guy will fill those, and then the customer or the contractor can pick them up whenever they want, and the company gets full visibility that that was done. And so, really, we've been able to drive that operational efficiency and drive the workflow that you want to see with somebody coming to that site, whether they're an employee or a third party.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that hits perfectly, on our main points here with operational efficiencies. You hit on very well. Visibility, knowing exactly who's getting in to what job site or what container, having the analytics just behind it. So if there are incidences, you can go back to your log sheet on the Geokey portal and see, okay, lock number 7 was unlocked by Andy at this time. Well, you can track down that information just a little bit better as opposed to when you're with keys. Maybe an old employee has that key. With Geokey, someone quits, it is a short-term employee or contractor, whatever the case is. You can go and easily revoke access to that person. Heck, even limit the time window of when those people can get in. So if you don't want anybody that has access to that padlock within your company to get in past 8 p.m., you can shut off access. So when they walk up, they try to power that padlock up to unlock it. It's not going to show up on their phone. They're not going to be able to get in. So you have complete control on whatever you're trying to secure. So
and that's the whole reason why you put a padlock on something anyways. That I think that's the thing to remember is that people, if you're using a padlock, you actually were shopping for an access control. And if somebody in the day that you had somebody saying, hey, you can use this padlock, or I can give you the ability that anywhere that you have your phone, someone says, I need access, you could be like, here's access. Oh, they opened it, they're done. And most people would say, like they do with their homes, they say, oh, I want something that I can have quick and easy visibility. The other side of it is that you really do drive the right kind of interaction with the site. Because when people know that there's a level of tracking, and it's not so much tracking, it's accountability, you're able to reinforce the accountability for whatever you're putting a padlock on. People do what they're supposed to. And that's why I keep touching on, you're able to manage that workflow.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that kind of wraps it all up on my end. Any closing thoughts, any final statements that you want to share?
Yeah, I would say one, NOKE, we've really worked very closely with the Geokey team. We've been impressed with them. They've been able to take on some opportunities that we traditionally would take on, but we've passed them over to Geokey because we trust them and their team. I think if you're watching this and you're either a customer or you're a reseller or channel partner of Geokey, and your question is like, who buys these? Where's the value points? I think simply said is that it's really anybody who puts a padlock on something, they would prefer to have a way to real-time visibility. Even if that padlock might sit on there for 4 years and then somebody needs access. This is why we have been able to do so much international volume and do all sorts of really things, because the market is ready for basically, I want to have a one-stop to manage my access, and I want to be able to kind of see what's gone on. And if any of your customers or internally, if you're using more than a dozen locks, the chances are you could probably get your money's worth within the first year of just being able to simply manage those locks from a computer, from a phone. for your end users, and just have a better overall experience with that site as far as getting into it and then making sure that it's taken care of the way you want it. So
Awesome.
Awesome, Ramsay. I appreciate the time. Always good conversations with you. So, anybody has any questions, our contact info will be shared on the slides here within this video. Also, always feel free on our website and contact us there at geokeyaccess.com. But appreciate the time today.